You don't want to be a hunter in this universe. Sung Jin-Woo might have made a lot of people wish they'd be like him, but they won't. Ruthless monsters, unfair systems, and unavoidable backstabbing are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to dungeon raids and the day-to-day life. Hello comrade, my name is Bahis. Come, get yourself a beverage and sit down with me. We got a hunter's orientation to conduct. Spoiler free, excluding season 1 of course. Let's start off with your life as a hunter, which unlike the later sections of this video does include some positives. First and foremost, they are superhuman. Even if you're an E rank, whether you decide to delve into the dungeons or not, you have an undeniable advantage over the majority of the population, be it in doing certain jobs that require physical ability, or in your daily routine in the form of self-defense, saving money on energy bills, and other potential conveniences depending on what skills you rolled. However, another thing that comes with an awakening is the pressure of responsibility in the eyes of the public. Remember how we occasionally see bystanders nagging about the gates taking too long to clear, or straight up blaming hunters for not being able to contain a break? The general public is starting to take them for granted, just like police and such civil services, which will soon develop into, well, you signed up for it, chop chop, go get it done. Although at this point in the story, raiders are mostly respected the way they should be, as we see with our man's landlord cutting him a bit of slack and the community looking up to them, wanting to become hunters too. I wonder what the perk situation is for them. Like, are there any discounts in some places like fast food, free passes to fitness facilities, and so on? There must be an entire network that includes brand new types of businesses, given the amount of money the hunters themselves are paid and in general circulation within this industry. On the flip side, we have the struggles of being in this line of work. You know shit's fucked up when the association chief tells you to stay both humble and afraid to survive, which is a complete opposite from something you'd be taught in the military, for example, where the more machine-like you are, the better. Obviously, it does mean that one should cower in fear in the face of monsters, but it highlights just how dangerous and unpredictable dungeons can get. There are precautions in place to minimize the risks, such as the mana measurement to assess its level and recommended team combinations, but given the scarcity of hunters, the compromises have to be made regularly, which doesn't contribute to their survival rate. You could be a veteran of the field with years of experience, yet it only takes one raid gone wrong to wipe part of the whole team, setting back the strength of your country and resulting in more compromises to feed the vicious cycle. The worst part is that the bloodthirsty beasts are only half of your concerns when the whole system is a breeding ground for shady activities, not to mention how a sudden surge of power can change many people. I'm personally of the opinion that power doesn't necessarily corrupt, it merely allows people to be themselves, though I also can't deny that the story of Walter White will be very common in this new reality. Hunting means money. Yeah, sure, there is glory, recognition, maybe even desire to save the world, but for an average Awakened Joe, seeing the number of digits in their bank account increasing will become the prime motivation. Not for everybody, it's a bell curve like with most things, and we see it perfectly represented within the story, where we have both good and bad people in every rank. Take Sung Smell-Good. He has gotten into this profession solely because it's the only one that will pay his mother's hospital fees and his sister's tuition. Then there is Hunter Kim and Hunter Park, who have the same goal of feeding their family, Taeshi Kang, who just wants to kill people, as well as Jin Ho, whose main goal is to solve his daddy issues. The last one was a joke, yet it's clear that for a lot of hunters, dungeons are simply a means to an end. As such, they employ every trick in a book to get what they want, giving rise to an expression, what happens in the dungeon stays in the dungeon. The most harmless display of this is the loot distribution custom. It's not based on needs and simply follows the logic of, you get as much as you have contributed. That's a very selfish approach, which again, I can't argue given the circumstances. Look at World of Warcraft Hardcore, for example. There is a surprising amount of similarities with the solo leveling world concepts, where you only have one life in the game, and in order to complete dungeons, you have to often team up with random people of varying skill sets. While raiding in WoW, the leader can set loot distribution to be free-for-all, loot master, and so on, but the most common one is party loot. It makes the team take turns while looting monsters to collect miscellaneous stuff, with any uncommon items being rolled by everyone. That way, when a magic staff drops, mages have a higher chance of getting it as opposed to it going to a warrior and being sold. There's still a lot of drama, and loot does get stolen sometimes, but on average, your rogue is unlikely to run without a weapon, Sung no loot style. I know that anything found in the dungeon is worth good money, yet I'd feel like a total schmuck if my party member's weapon broke and now he has to fight barehanded. Ultimately, it reduces our chances of survival even by a little bit, as he can at least take one enemy off our backs. However, before you say it, I understand that there are situations which flip the statement upside down. This is a much more morally gray area with no right answer, only bad, worse, and terrible. As somebody in the show said, occasionally, hunters are left behind in a fashion similar to lizards losing their tail. It goes back to dungeons being unpredictable, and when shit hits the fan, whether because your team comp was good enough or there are individuals not pulling their weight, you have to make tough decisions. There is a reason ninja squads in Naruto consist of only 3 or 4 people. It's much easier to keep tabs on each other and act as a unit when there is just a few of you. Important thing to note, this is not a dungeon clearing mentality as much as it is trying to survive in a pinch with minimal losses. Next, we have straight up rat behavior, which is nothing more than using a dungeon to exploit other people. Hwang Dong-suk is the best or worst example of this, having an entire team of accomplices who regularly kill hunters during their raids. I wouldn't call their operation the most refined, since there is a pattern that people started noticing, yet it worked well for them. Grab some no-names who don't have the guild's protection, use them to distract monsters or even the boss, and then dispose of them. You get to keep all the loot and some more in the form of extra gear from the corpses without much repercussions, as it's very hard to even notice this happening, let alone prove it. Another thing that can transpire is you as a hunter getting involved into somebody else's conflicts or witnessing something others would like to keep between friends. For instance, Jin-Ho was given an opportunity to purchase his life by slaying an E-rank, becoming an accomplice, and getting into a relationship he'd likely never escape. Dungeons are a perfect outlet for organized crime. Laundering money, trading restricted goods, assassinations are all on the table, and in order to live a normal hunter life, you'd have to learn to look the other way and not ask stupid questions like these two with Dashik Kang. Somehow, the above-mentioned rich kid knew to immediately appease Sung Jin-Woo instead of standing there like, "Oh, what's going on? Why do you do this?" Ask any local gangsters, please don't, how to stay out of trouble with them, and they will all say to mind your own business. If this green naive boy knows about fake rankers, there must be a few of them out there, and even more considering that they likely eliminate witnesses, meaning that the public is aware of unlawful activity within dungeons, making these guys' combined IQ below triple digits. That's not all. In such a tense environment where competition for loot and success is so high, bending or straight up breaking rules will be quite common. The protocol clearly says, go notify people outside before exploring a sketchy tunnel. What do? Put it to a vote, because then it feels like we are a bit less responsible on an individual level and did what a group as a whole decided. We all know how it ended, but even the smaller scale problem, like 2 people wanting the same item drop, can escalate into a major conflict. Say 2 warriors want this shiny new sword and decide to duke it out in the middle of the dungeon. You will have to make a decision whether you try to break it up, pick a side, or grab popcorn. In the first case, you position yourself between a rock and a hard place. In the second, you might antagonize some teammates, and in the third, there's no telling how others will react. Regardless, your party's combat readiness heavily depends on the people involved, and unless it's a well-oiled guild/friends group, the human factor should always be at the back of your mind. Okay, how about we take a step back and talk about the Awakening a bit more, because it's one of the most unfair systems out there with many negative surprises. The number one thing is the fact that you are stuck at the power level you are given. There are a few things you can do, like acquiring better gear or simply getting good in order to become a bit stronger, but for the majority of hunters, this will mean that there is no point in going hard to get better because you simply won't. It's a very dangerous mindset for 2 reasons. 1, you get comfortable becoming less humble and afraid of monsters, increasing your chances of getting caught lacking, and 2, you become inflexible in the event of some unexpected fuckery. For instance, it's not that everyone in the Cardnon Temple were too dumb to solve this riddle, more like they were strong enough for dungeons they usually do, so they got stuck in their ways. The reason Sung No Fool survived is because he always, and I mean always, fought from behind, which allowed him to develop borderline precognition through constant learning and adapting to compensate for his particular lack of skills. Others got used to their strength being set in stone and never pushed themselves to their limits the way RMC did because it was likely never required. Moreover, the higher ranks also have the opposite problem. Arrogance, due to the fact that anyone weaker will never catch up to them and thus can be treated as inferior or unimportant. Minor spoiler just to reinforce this point. The tank disregarding the leveling daddy's expertise even though he has years more of dungeon crawling experience. This kinda goes back to my Walter White argument. When you're put in a situation of constant life threat, shady people and brutal combat, you change. I don't expect them to all become cold-hearted sociopaths, but they will definitely become rougher around the edges, highlighting their worst traits and in some cases, letting power go to their head. An analogous real-world example. Analogous. Cool word, I like it. An analogous real-world example would be someone getting virally popular out of nowhere. Few can maintain their dignity in the face of sudden money and fame, with the latest sensation speedrunning the influencer career in record time. Take that to the extreme by adding actual power to back it up, and it won't be hard to understand why there are so many people like Wang Dong-soo. Another thing that can happen to a hunter, just like IRL with people constantly risking their lives, is post-traumatic stress disorder. I doubt you'll be able to avoid seeing some serious shit in a dungeon even at the lower ranks, so you'll have to cope with it one way or another, otherwise you'll end up broken like the best girl. Speaking of which, we can't forget about the families of hunters who will be living in a constant fear of their loved ones not coming back from the raid. Gina, although understanding that her brother needs this job, constantly threatens him the best she can to not risk his life so much. It's one thing when someone is weak in terms of power, and a completely different story if the weakness is in their mind. Ju-hee has awakened as a decent B-rank support, yet she just doesn't have the right personality to be in this line of work. Yes, you can attribute some of that to her mother, who is constantly belittling her and trying to get her to come back home, making this gorgeous redhead be a huntress out of spite. However, can you really blame a parent for wanting their child to be safe? I don't think so, but I will say that she could have at least been encouraged to become a doctor or a first responder as opposed to inheriting whatever family business. There are other people who share this sentiment. The teacher who Sung Charm's schoolmate was very happy to hear that he won't allow his sister to become a huntress and even asked him to discourage Song Yi from pursuing this career. I really like how the anime handled the topic of family in this universe, from the MC's thoughts at the altar to Hunter Kim's dialogue with his wife. It felt like a very healthy conversation, where both sides expressed and acknowledged each other's position, coming to an agreement that they need this raid for the sake of their future. Sadly, it didn't end well, and we see it being a common occurrence, so much so that some hunters straight up carry their will on them in case they have to leave it behind or found dead in the line of duty. On the topic of dungeons, I have a few more things to add because their concept itself is rather terrifying. A pocket dimension connected to our world by a portal, which is filled with beasts immune to conventional weapons and where electronics don't work. No wonder they say calling a hunter courageous is an understatement, because you go balls deep into the unknown with little chance of calling for backup or escaping if shit goes south. As I said before, the only intel you get is the approximate level of the dungeon, which sometimes can be plain wrong or can change dynamically thanks to the red gate phenomenon. That's when the portal gets blocked until the strike team finishes the boss or dies, on top of adding various environmental conditions and monsters being much stronger. Then there is the fact that dungeons pose different levels of threat to hunters and people they are protecting. You think that the higher ranked ones will be the most dangerous for the public as they are for raiders, but it turns out that it's either the lowest or the highest ranked dungeons that are the worst. The former is due to them being hard to detect, which can lead to a dungeon break, and the latter is due to S ranks being the hardest one to clear, taking an unspeakable amount of lives if not closed in time. Moreover, there is the hunter's politics, which we'll focus on in a bit. The guilds mostly care about dungeons that are C rank or above because they bring the most profits, leaving the D ranks and below, which are the most common, to the association, who is severely lacking in manpower. As a result, even the dungeons that can be cleared solo by a competent hunter go breaky and become a cool hangout spot for the local community. The scariest part is that humanity doesn't know much about dungeons in terms of how they came to be, why are there beasts just chilling inside, and what new dangers to expect. It heavily reminds me of Bloodborne, with Gehrman saying, "Don't think too hard about all this, just go out and kill a few beasts, it's for your own good. You know, it's just what the hunters do, you'll get used to it." I won't be too surprised if the story borrowed some concepts from this game and that it's all some kind of fabricated bullshit made by a great one of sorts. Potentially the statue of the god, who, as I speculated before, can be either a previous player who got bored or an actual divinity. Alright, let's take a brief break from the dungeons and tackle a topic many don't really consider. Your daily life on the outside, more specifically, its dangers and caveats. For example, I've noticed that during the street dungeon incident, the association had to scramble and rally anyone who was close to deal with this mess, which led to a few hunters being, underdressed for the occasion. I've never thought of this before, because most of the time this fantasy stuff happens in, well, fantasy setting, where wearing armor, funny hats and even weapons on the regular is totally normal. Considering that magic gear is the only way to be stronger in solo leveling, engaging in a fight with monsters without it can negatively affect your well-being in addition to reducing your combat prowess. For someone like Ju-Hee it's not that big of a deal, but for a tank to fight without a shield and some plates would be a death sentence. On top of that, you're also more vulnerable in case there are people who have a bone to pick with you. Suppose there was a dispute in the dungeon and one of your team members took it personally. They don't need to wait to meet in the dungeon again to catch you in a dark alley or even at the comfort of your own home. Without weapons on the quick bar, like with our main character, even the equally strong opponent will be a significant challenge. Another possibility is that someone can sell valuable intel about you to an underground broker, which can get you targeted by less than respectable individuals or give them an upper hand if they've already decided so. It's not hard to imagine that there will be snakes in random parties who would memorize raiders who got fat loot and then report it to a type of syndicate to get a flat rate or a commission. With even mediocre artifacts costing millions, this will be happening left, right and center, so you would be wise to keep all your findings and or abilities to yourself to avoid unnecessary attention. Example, if Teshi Kang knew that Sung Kil-Yu had a poisonous dagger, he would have been more cautious not to get scratched by it. Before we wrap up, there is one more aspect of Hunter's life we have to consider. There are other hunters, a lot of them, and they form a separate industry with its own rules, guilds and governments. Although you do get benefits, some protection, as well as many opportunities, there are a lot of things outside your control affecting the entire country and even the whole world. Take accountability for example. Who is going to check a hunter who decides to say fuck it and do whatever they please? Only other hunters of comparable or above strength. And if we're talking S ranks, not even the military can do anything about them, so it's up to the other S ranks to maintain the peace. Our regular laws mean jack shit in the face of such power, and we as regular hunters/humans have to rely on these people to play nice, which is not a good guarantee of anything. That's why there are several major guilds on top of the Hunters Association. If one steps out of line, the rest will strain it back up. But with all that inner politics and the chase of profits, a lot of lesser issues slip through the cracks. A strike team with a suspicious mortality rate doesn't get investigated because 1. How do you prove that? And 2. It's connected to an S rank. Actually, things are so bad that the only survivors of 2 extremely strange raids were barely questioned, so what do you expect? Sure, the double dungeon incident was looked into. However, that's due to the dungeon itself being an issue and not the people inside. You can clearly see the priorities here, so when something bad happens to you, you're basically on your own. Then there is plain corruption in various forms, one of which is Jin-Ho trying to start his own guild by clearing 20 dungeons with the help of one broken dude. What do you think will happen when this kind of person starts to manage the guild? Forget that he's an E rank, which in itself rings a lot of alarm bells. He didn't acquire any real fighting, leading or even recruiting experience, so anyone he does hire will be risking their lives even more, resulting in extra casualties. In a similar fashion, whoever is throwing the teams together will see that one of those filler hunters has been performing well recently and will account for their competence in the upcoming raid, only to be majorly disappointed by what they're about to see. Oh, and how about buying out all the dungeons to the point where there aren't any left? Sounds like a very exploitable loophole to either crank up the prices or do other shady activities. You shouldn't let this happen as a government or the Hunters Association, because how would you train newbies, for example? Can't just let them shadow A or B ranks, as they will drag the entire team down. To sum up, being a hunter comes with way more headaches than it does with cash. Yes, you can make a fortune raiding dungeons, and that's exactly why most people are hunting to begin with. Still, unless you are passionate about saving this world or risking your life for others, I suggest you reconsider this line of work, but if that's what you really want to do, remember above all else to stay both humble and afraid. It was I, Mahias, trying to keep you out of trouble. Have a great, whatever time of the day you have. Until next time, cheers. An analogous real-world example, real world, for fuck's sake.